On this edition of Sightings, in 1908, witnesses said it looked like the end of the world. Now, Russian scientists believe an extraterrestrial craft exploded over the Siberian countryside. Then, did a grisly supernatural force cause these bizarre deaths?
Within an inch or two of the body, there is virtually no fire damage at all.
You can't see it, you can't touch it, but a mysterious ghostly energy has been captured on tape in an exclusive Sightings investigation.
We would probably have to classify this location as a classic haunt.
And best-selling authors offer a wondrous vision of the afterlife.
The bottom line of what people can learn is to not fear death.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. One summer day in 1908, in a remote region of Siberia called Tunguska, 800 square miles of virgin forest were flattened in an instant. The explosion had the power of 2,000 nuclear bombs and sent pressure waves around the planet twice. Few people outside Russia have been allowed to investigate Tunguska, but now our Sightings team has been granted unprecedented access. What they've found is evidence of an otherworldly power that could strike again. Imagine a 10-megaton bomb with 2,000 times the power that destroyed Hiroshima. Imagine feeling the shock waves from that explosion halfway across the globe, and then the next day feeling them again. Imagine devastation so widespread it would have consumed all of New York City in less than a minute. Now, know that it all happened in 1908. Tsar Nicholas II ruled Imperial Russia. World War I was still to be fought, and nuclear weapons weren't even a dream. And yet the explosion that decimated the remote Tunguska region of Siberia resembled a nuclear blast in a number of uncanny ways. Some scientists insist the nightmare of destruction was the result of a comet that exploded above Earth. But other experts believe that an extraterrestrial craft from an advanced civilization is somehow responsible. For 86 years, the debate has continued, but there is still no consensus. Comet theorists need a crater. Ufologists need just one shred of physical evidence. But whether the Tunguska blast was a comet, meteor, or an alien craft, scientists are worried. Will it happen again somewhere else? How do we prepare for a cataclysmic event like this when we don't understand its origins? Professor Nikolai Vasilyev is a renowned Russian scientist who has made more than 30 trips to the epicenter.
This isn't Russia's problem. Tunguska affects the whole world and all of the mankind. It doesn't pose a great danger only to Russia, but rather for mankind as a whole. This isn't a fictional tale, nor flight of fancy. I base my opinions on facts obtained from my work on Tunguska problems. I don't want to scare our viewing audience. The situation is to a great extent ambiguous and highly serious.
Recently, the Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet made a crater on Jupiter the size of Earth. 50,000 years ago, a meteorite did this in Arizona. In Tunguska, whatever happened in 1908 only did this. No crater has ever been found. Moscow was the first stop for our Sightings investigative team. There, we met the scientists who support the party line. Although they cannot explain why there is no crater at the blast site, they still insist it was a comet that hit Tunguska.
I am a staunch supporter of the comet hypothesis, and I think that there is no serious proof to refute it. It does have several problems.
As a geochemist, Professor Kolesnikov is trying to solve these problems using existing theories. He admits he isn't getting any closer to a definitive answer. Instead, there are just more unanswered questions.
There was mutation. We are researching this. It is possible that all objects in the epicenter were exposed to a small dose of X-ray radiation.
X-ray radiation is one of the known byproducts of a nuclear explosion. Did Russia have atomic bomb technology at the turn of the century? Highly unlikely. Who then had the technology to create this kind of devastation? From Moscow, we flew 1,900 miles into the heart of the mystery, into Tunguska itself, a journey no American television crew has ever attempted. After a 6-kilometer hike, our team reached what is believed to be ground zero.
This rock was placed here by one of the early Tunguska expeditions in 1928.
Our guide in Tunguska was Vitaly Voronov, a Siberian native whose ties to the areas date back 3 centuries. He has collected an oral history of the Tunguska explosion. Voronov is a vital link to those who actually witnessed the cataclysm that must have seemed like the end of the world.
One eyewitness told me he was riding a stallion when he heard what sounded like cannon shots. When he looked up, he saw a body glowing like the sun. It began declining towards the horizon for maybe 15 or 20 seconds. There were many small explosions on the object. It ended with one heavy explosion. The force of the explosion was so strong, the man and the horse were knocked to the ground 15 miles away.
Sightings also heard the retelling of a first-hand account of the explosion. A local spiritual leader, a shaman, said as a young boy he was running away from the blast when he saw something fly out of the epicenter. A cylinder with sparks shooting out of it. The cylinder flew over the shaman's head and into outer space. Could this cylinder have caused the blast? Yuri Lovbin believes he has found evidence to support the theory that Tunguska was the site of an alien encounter gone awry. He has unearthed masses of anomalous matter.
In the beginning, we found small fragments buried deep in the earth. But there was nothing on the surface, no fragments at all. All trees collapsed, and over many years, everything went underground.
Chemical analysis reveals that these rock-like fragments have a silicon coating, the same kind of material used as heat shielding on our space shuttles. Lovbin believes these large masses are actually exploded fragments from the exterior of a UFO.
It is possible that this could be a ship from another planet, an intergalactical ship which was riveted with silicon. And we found its thick-walled casing, used to protect the craft from the high temperatures of the stars.
Lovbin's most intriguing piece of evidence, however, was not found at the crash site. It was discovered months later, embedded in one of the fragments.
I took pincers and extracted this object. Here it is. It was surrounded by crystal light, transparent and non-transparent particles.
Has Lovbin found the first physical evidence of an extraterrestrial spacecraft? He has compared his sample with metals commonly found on Earth and in meteorites. So far, there is no match. The fragment continues to undergo rigorous metallurgical testing. When analysis is complete, Sightings will report the findings to you. There are so many theories because the Tunguska event has no precedent. No known natural phenomenon can adequately explain this event, so even mainstream scientists admit they're looking in a new direction.
Can we hope to obtain an explanation of Tunguska using classical conceptions? 10 years ago, I would have definitely answered yes. Now, I'm doubtful that it can be explained without resorting to non-classical conceptions.
Next, should these people profit from the wondrous visions they say they've had on the other side?
People making money off the near-death experience are wrong.
In 1961, a controversial little book by Jessica Mitford called The American Way of Death sent shockwaves across America. It was the first popular book about death. Today, nearly 35 years later, books about death are one of the fastest growing categories in publishing.
My name is Daniel Brinkley. I have a book on the New York Times bestseller list called Saved by the Light. And for people who don't know about it, it's about me going through 2 near-death experiences.
Author Daniel Brinkley believes he's been to heaven and back, and he's not alone. According to a recent Gallup poll, 30% of us claim to have had or know someone who has had a near-death experience. More than 100 books have been written about NDE, and some of them are making it onto the bestseller list.
I believe that it's important to get the message out about the near-death experience because there's just too many people afraid of death. The near-death experience teaches us to not fear death. And if we're not afraid to die, we're not afraid to live.
The classic pattern of a near-death experience is well documented. First, an out-of-body experience leads you through a tunnel towards a bright light. Once there, you meet your God.
I wasn't breathing. I had no pulse or known cardiac activity for between 20 minutes and an hour and a half.
You're helpless. You feel helpless. For the first time in your life, you're totally helpless.
Then I felt a tremendous sinking sensation, and then I came out of my chest and rose up to the ceiling, and I could look down and see my body lying there on the bed.
And rapidly, I'm pulled out of my body and right into a dark, totally dark tunnel with a sensation of speed, rapid speed.
I saw a pinpoint of light in this blackness, and I was attracted to it. So I turned and I began to travel very rapidly towards that bright light.
I was part of the light, and the light was part of me. It was not painful. It was absolutely wonderful.
And I was able to ask thousands of questions, millions of questions, and have every one of my questions answered.
Then to my right came a being of light. And this being was there to witness or be with me. I had a panoramic review of my life. I felt every emotion, everything I'd ever done, every word I'd ever said, and every experience I'd ever had with anyone that I'd ever come in contact with.
After I went through my life review, I was told that I had not completed my time on Earth, that it was really necessary for me to return and to do that.
When I re-entered my body, it was like I'd been in a car crash. I crashed back in. It was a jolt that I felt right down to the fiber of my spine. 13 million Americans have had some type of near-death experience. I'm just one of them.
Brinkley's cashing in on his near-death experience, but no one approaches the success enjoyed by author Betty Eadie, whose book Embraced by the Light has been the nation's #1 bestseller for more than a year.
There is absolutely no way to fully describe the beauty that is there. They said a good analogy would be that heaven is like the print, and earth would be much like the negative. All of the flowers and the trees, with their movement, with their mere existence, was glorifying God and praising Him.
The unprecedented success of Embraced by the Light speaks to our nation's hunger for reassurance about life's ultimate mystery. But Betty Eadie is drawing fire from other experiencers who believe she should not profit from her NDE.
Look, I've experienced near death, and I know the values that you're given in that experience. People making money off the near-death experience, like Betty Eadie and others, are wrong. They're not authentic, and they're hurting the near-death experience movement.
I can't speak for all the authors out making a mint right now, but I can speak for some of them because I've known them for such a long time that I know that they wrote books to truly try to help people.
Doctors and medical researchers believe the near-death experience can be explained scientifically. To them, NDE is simply a hallucination caused by a brain cut off from oxygen.
There's nothing magical about a near-death experience. The basic themes of the near-death experience are remarkably similar across cultures. The reason being that the 5 billion brains that make up this planet are remarkably similar in their structure.
To prove his point, Dr. Persinger believes he can duplicate a near-death experience in the laboratory using a perfectly healthy subject.
What we attempt to do is to apply safe levels of complex magnetic fields through the brain. The frequencies we use and where we place the field induce the experiences that are associated with that part of the brain. If you stimulate the brain with a different kind of pattern, you make the person feel pleasurable, leaving their body. In fact, the most common experiences in the chamber are feeling detached, feeling floating, feeling as if there's a sense of a presence.
I believe, along with skeptics, that our brain is related to this experience, but there are things that happen in a near-death experience that have yet to be explained by the brain.
Even though you might get a doctor to explain to me my body, they cannot explain to me my spirit. Their explanations for what happens to a near-death experiencer is simply weak.
The fact that we now understand the part of the brain that mediates the experience does not demean the experience and does not make it less useful or less important from the point of view of our species or the individual.
Whether near-death experience is physical or metaphysical may be beside the point. People who claim to have seen what's behind death's door are finding an audience. They tell us there is light at the end of a dark journey we must all take one day.
People are buying these books because these are the substitutes, powerful substitutes for traditional religious beliefs that no longer work.
Death is the last great mystery. And as we start to look at the near-death experience, we have at least a basis by which to view the way we leave this earth. For one thing that most of us come back with is we're not afraid to die. And more importantly, we're not afraid to live.
The author of Embracing the Light, Betty Eadie, has not been forthcoming about the medical details of her near-death experience. Her secrecy frustrates researchers who are looking for cases of near-death experience that can be scientifically substantiated.
Next, a bizarre phenomenon defies explanation, yet people continue to die.
Skin, muscle and bone had been turned into a fine white ash.
For more than 300 years, there have been strange reports of people who were found dead, reduced to ash, while everything around them remains unburned. It's called spontaneous human combustion, but that popular term is kind of a misnomer. In this phenomenon, people don't suddenly burst into flame. Instead, they appear to have been slowly devoured by intense heat from the inside out. Some researchers and fire officials believe that these are the victims of the strange, misunderstood phenomenon known as spontaneous human combustion, or SHC. No one knows how or even if SHC occurs, but mysterious deaths by fire like these have been reported throughout history. Authors Jenny Randles and Peter Huff have documented over 70 possible cases of SHC in the 20th century alone.
We're talking about a situation where the fire is so localized that within an inch or two of the body, which is turned to ash, apart from a few extremities perhaps, there is virtually no fire damage at all. So this is a self-contained fire. And the implication from that, although of course it's not proven, is that the fire begins internally and spreads outward from the body and therefore never goes very far beyond the extremities of the body, consequently doesn't affect the room itself.
Scientifically speaking, there is no way the human body, which is largely water, can spontaneously combust. There is no mechanism by which it can happen.
But there are fire experts who disagree. They maintain that the same kind of spontaneous combustion that occurs in nature can also occur in humans, if conditions are right.
If you take the human being as just a bulk substance made up of a whole range of materials, from water to highly combustible chemicals. Heat it sufficiently, give it sufficient oxygen, and use the fuel that's within the body, then it will burst into flame, the same as any other bulk material.
In this working-class district of Chorley in Lancashire, England, Peter Huff has been investigating a grisly case of suspected SHC.
The incident happened on the night of the 4th of March 1980 in this house here. An elderly lady lived in the house at the time alone, and it was the previous evening that neighbours last saw her alive. Later that night at around 9:30, they noticed black smoke coming from the chimney but thought no more of it. And the following morning, when two men called at the house, they got no reply. Neighbours forced their way into the house, and what they discovered was grisly, to say the least. From the waist upwards, everything, including skin, muscle and bone, had been turned into a fine white ash.
SHC investigators point out that turning a body to ash is beyond the scientific possibility of even the most sophisticated crematorium.
In my time working here as a cremationist, I've never seen a body that has been cremated to nothing. There has always been skeletal remains left over.
Even at 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, human bones cannot be reduced to ash. They have to be pulverized with heavy grinding stones before they can be placed inside an urn.
So if a body was reduced to ash in a fire, it would be a mystery to me in how that occurred.
Comparisons to crematorium are false comparisons. It's like comparing a piece of wood that you've set on fire with a match to a piece of wood that you put in the oven and baked. You may have to bake it at a very high temperature to have any effect on that wood. But baking and actual fire burning are very different phenomena, and so there's no comparison.
Another baffling element common to most cases is the fact that highly flammable objects like furnishings, pillows, and carpets near the body don't burn.
This is really remarkable. One would think that a fire, a normal fire of the order, which would be necessary to burn a human body at all, would have also have set the room ablaze.
Anyone who's had any experience, I think, with a simple thing like a campfire knows that you can get quite close and put things quite close to a fire laterally, but place them over the fire and they burn readily. So again, these are not mysteries. These, while unusual that the body burns that way without the house burning down, while these may be relatively unusual deaths, they're not unexplainable.
To date, no coroner has ever written spontaneous human combustion on a death certificate. They prefer cause unknown or simply by fire. Despite skepticism from the medical establishment, Jenny Randles and Peter Huff continue to document mysterious fire-related deaths that they believe may be the result of spontaneous human combustion.
Does that want a real scientific investigation? I think it does. If we had 100 deaths of a particular unknown disease, I'm sure the medical profession would like to find out why.
Next is an alien intelligence trying to communicate through these newly discovered crop circles.
There seems to be, in some of the better cases, a definite UFO connection.
And later, a supernatural phenomenon is captured on tape during an exclusive sightings investigation.
Crop circles are generally associated with the fields and grasslands of Great Britain. The formations discovered outside the British Isles have almost all been ruled out as hoaxes. But in the past year, an intriguing new series of crop circles is being studied along the U.S.-Canadian border.
Well, the first day I saw it, my blood pressure went up.
It's very difficult to describe. The air is full of electricity.
There was something out there that was watching me that I didn't know about.
They appear at first light. An American icon, amber waves of grain, crushed by an unseen force. Is it a hoax? Sometimes. But here, there are no footprints, no tire tracks, no obvious sign of a human hand at work.
I believe it's an alien intelligence of some sort.
It was just a very eerie force around me.
Nobody has actually seen a transmission of the formation.
The scientific term is agriglyph, literally crop picture. Once a predominantly European phenomenon, 3 new North American agriglyphs are being studied. This one appeared near Portland, Oregon in June 1994. Then, in July, 2 separate designs appeared in the same wheat field in Chehalis, Washington. 2 weeks later, and 2,000 miles away, this classic pattern was discovered in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Farmer John Parks was on a routine inspection when he discovered the formation in his neighbor's wheat field.
The straw was just bent, just laid over, right from the ground. The stalk was still one big long piece of straw, but it was just tipped and laying right flat on the ground.
I find it hard to believe that a human being actually could really go in there and do that without disturbing any straw.
If you went in and pushed it with your foot, the straw would kink, would bend somewhere in the middle and be broken, and this straw wasn't broken.
The evening before the crop circle appeared, animals in a kennel less than 1 mile away were acting strangely. The guard dog was barking incessantly. The owner of the boarding kennel was puzzled by his dog's erratic behavior.
Around midnight on Sunday night, she started to make a racket, barking, whining, and we told her to be quiet, and she just wouldn't respond. An animal sense a lot of things which we don't, you know, so what turned it on like that, I don't know.
Did the same force that affected the wheat affect local animals as well?
He was actually putting up quite a fuss. He didn't want to go past the circle whatsoever, and so I settled him down. His eyes were this big. The white was showing around his eyes. He was really nervous.
Is there a connection between the nervous energy exhibited by animals and the anomalous energy that flattened this wheat? That's a possibility being explored by the United States Center for Crop Circle Studies.
There are certain features that you develop an eye for, and if you keep an open mind and not coming in with an expectation of finding this or not finding, if you stay open, you'll see all kinds of things. The clues are all over.
The obvious first thing to do is try to see if there's any entry or exit marks, possible signs of maybe something mechanical being brought in there.
Then I use my eyes and my camera. And before I touch things or lift things or move things, or before things get another couple of seconds older, I photograph it.
Then, grain samples from the affected areas are isolated and undergo microscopic evaluation. Among those studying the samples, biophysicist Dr. W.C. Levengood and research associate John Burke. They hypothesize that the crop circles are caused by unusual but natural atmospheric forces.
John and I came up with a concept based on very unusual natural phenomena in the atmosphere.
At his laboratory in Grass Lake, Michigan, Dr. Levengood is currently conducting a comprehensive biomolecular study of crop circles. He has discovered that wheat from certain formations have actually become magnetized.
They go through biochemical changes. They go through cellular changes. This is a control node here, showing you the normal node, very symmetrical. And what we find here is that there are very drastic changes in the formation samples, which cannot be explained by ordinary trampling or hoaxing or any of that. Now, in the formation, what we find is that this energy is so intense and so rapid, the heat is so high, that it literally blows expulsion cavities.
We have an enormous amount of evidence that indicates that the causes of crop circle formations are quite likely ion plasma vortices. And while this may sound exotic, you could picture a slow-speed electrified tornado, if you will, because plasma is nothing more than electrified air particles. It's very similar to trying to deal with the weather. It's on a bigger scale and so complex and chaotic. With all the resources at the command of our weather bureaus, we can't do an accurate 5-day forecast. That doesn't mean we don't understand the principles of meteorology. And the same thing is true of crop circles.
Theoretically, a spiraling ion plasma vortex could create circles in standing crop. But could a force of nature create these intricate patterns?
I believe that the circle makers are non-terrestrial entities, and probably non-physical, non-terrestrial entities who don't need UFOs. I don't believe that these are craft landings or pod marks.
The National Director of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network Canada, is investigating the suspicious origin of the Ontario crop circle.
There seems to be, in some of the better cases, a definite UFO connection. There's also evidence of paranormal activity like psychic effects, physical effects.
Strainick's theory is bolstered by reports of UFOs sighted the night before a crop circle discovery.
They are amber lights that are seen coming to the ground and extinguish when they touch the ground.
If an alien force is creating these circles, is it random, a cosmic prank, or are they trying to tell us something?
This could be the message as well, that we are in trouble here on planet Earth. Things have to be changed, and we are slowly being told and shown through crop circles and various other phenomena that we are not alone, and we may need some outside help.
All scientists, I think, have a love of the unknown, of the mystery of the unknown, and there's a beauty in crop formations as well that is rather compelling.
Crop circle investigations are becoming more and more scientific. Advanced technology is helping researchers gather extensive amounts of data. Unfortunately, all this new data still hasn't solved the mystery of how and why crop circles are being created, or by whom.
Coming up next, haunting sounds captured on tape have experts baffled at San Diego's Whaley House.
I'm not skeptical. It's kind of eerie to me.
There is an invisible energy that exists between magnet and metal. You can't see it or touch it, but you know that it's there. Some paranormal investigators believe that people generate a similar kind of energy, which remains in the environment even after death. They call it residue. These investigators suggest that what many people experience as a haunting may actually be their ability to feel, hear, or even see the existence of this spiritual residue. California, 1850, a stagecoach stop with good food and clean beds. Today, it's an historic landmark with a different kind of reputation. The Whaley House is considered one of the most haunted places in the West. Sandy Stokes was a reporter for the San Diego Press Enterprise when she investigated the Whaley House for a special Halloween story.
So to do a little bit of research to make sure that it was really haunted, I called up some ghost hunters, and one of the people I called was Richard Sennett.
So I sort of challenged her. I said, well, go ahead. Go down to the Whaley House, use a tape recorder, use brand new music quality tape, go from room to room, and when you're done, play it back and see if there isn't something that shouldn't be there.
So I took his advice and I came down here, and June Redding gave me a tour.
In her 34 years as director of the Whaley House, June Redding has experienced all kinds of haunting phenomena. She's convinced that Mrs. Whaley, a professional musician at the turn of the century, is still demonstrating her talents.
And we think perhaps her spirit isn't strong enough to return, but we have music coming from the music room, piano and violin music at times. We have the sound of a music box. A strain of a music box is not one of ours here.
Would Sandy's tape recorder pick up this anomalous music?
When I got back and played the tape, it was very interesting. I heard some sounds on it that we hadn't heard while we were walking through the house and I was interviewing her.
EVP is electronic voice phenomenon, and this first began in the 1970s when people using tape recorders began to get extra sounds that shouldn't be there.
The tape was digitally analyzed by EVP expert Brian Black. He discovered background sounds like clacking billiard balls, while June was giving Sandy a tour.
So was that on there when it was a courtroom too? Yeah. Oh. And these are ghosts? Those are the ghosts. This is an interesting one. Do you ever feel ghosts? Oh yeah. What does it feel like?
Brian recorded billiard sounds and compared them to the sounds on the tape, but it wasn't a match.
I did some research on the history of billiards and discovered that what they use for billiard balls has changed considerably.
Brian consulted with Terry Moldenauer, an expert on antique billiards.
The ivory balls were used from the early 1800s on up till about the 1930s, 40s, just recently when we went into the plastics.
When Brian repeated the test with ivory balls, the results were remarkable.
If you put the anomaly as a 10, something what would compare to it, I'd say an ivory comes in about 7 or an 8. Phenolic resin, the plastic that they use today, is too sharp and crisp.
When Brian told me that he had proved that it was the actual sound of a billiard game with balls that had not been in use since the turn of the century, I was really surprised. I was shocked.
Why were billiard sounds recorded in a part of the house that was once a county courtroom? June Redding's historical research turned up a startling answer.
Frank Whaley, who was the oldest boy in the family, organized what he called the Clavel Social Club. We have all the records. As a matter of fact, I think I still have some invitations somewhere.
My ultimate conclusion is that somehow Sandy picked up a sound of someone practicing billiards, apparently from 1905.
Residual haunting is sort of like a shadow imprinted on the fabric of time. Somehow leaves an impression, or a photograph, if you will, in an environment that replays and replays over and over again. And this is perhaps one of the best examples we have of retrocognitive sounds. Sounds from the past, somehow impressed on the environment to be recorded a century later.
With his results of Brian's study that I'm not skeptical. And it's kind of eerie to me.
Next, a Florida investigation uncovers a spirited phenomenon known as residue haunting.
The spirit of St. Petersburg High is definitely living here among us.
EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, is believed to be audio residue from the past. Researchers are also finding evidence of visual residue in the form of ghost-like apparitions and moving objects. This kind of residue haunting seems to occur most often in a place of high energy and emotion, a hospital, a church, or even a school. School's in session at St. Petersburg High. Kids still run in the halls. The principal still rules with an iron fist. Only trouble is, St. Petersburg High has been closed since 1926.
The spirit of St. Petersburg High is definitely living here among us.
Today, St. Petersburg High School has been converted into luxury condominiums. The old school rooms and hallways where teenagers of a distant past once dreamed of the future are gone. But people who live here now still see, hear, and feel echoes from the past.
A lot of people hear giggling and laughing in the hallways. People hear kids running down the hallways.
I witnessed probably the most spectacular, brightest white light I have ever seen in my entire life.
We've had lights go on and off in the middle of the night for no reason, and we've had a couple nights where we heard, big band music.
Have the students and teachers of yesteryear left an indelible metaphysical imprint on this historic building? Sightings called in Christopher Chacon and a team from the Office of Scientific Investigation and Research to interview the witnesses and stake out the interior with an array of state-of-the-art technology. The goal was to determine if Old St. Pete High is the site of what ghost experts refer to as residue haunting.
It would be possible that the children who went to school here may have in fact left some type of impression behind.
Among their instruments, this heat-sensitive imaging system called thermovision. It was this equipment that Chacon believes enabled his team to capture ghostly footprints on an earlier expedition.
Certainly the possibility is there that the experiences people are having are in connection to the students in class that were taking place back in the 1920s.
In 1920, St. Petersburg, Florida dedicated a new high school. The first yearbook had a prophetic dedication.
That the soul and spirit of the whole school could perhaps stay on for years to come, and which is in fact what could have happened here.
St. Petersburg High was a jewel in the city's crown. In 1920, St. Pete's first-class president was A.B. Fogarty. Today, he's one of the school's oldest living graduates.
When I picture the school, well, I see a large, airy, well-lit building with wide halls, a nice auditorium, people busy going to and fro to their different duties. And they had time to stop and talk to each other in those days.
St. Petersburg boomed so quickly that by 1926, the charming brick high school was too small. A larger school was built and Old St. Pete was abandoned. It had a variety of tenants over the next 60 years until it was converted into condos. When the new residents moved in, they felt an eerie sense that they were not alone.
You feel like you're living in someone else's space, and you have the feeling that you should respect it.
Bobby Brown had just moved into her apartment in the former science wing. She was watching television when she had her first paranormal encounter.
All of a sudden, this huge, shining disc that was gigantic, probably 6 feet across, came rolling through these windows. And when it hit the wall, it exploded into this millions of fragments of light, and the light was so bright it nearly blinded me. I believe there are spirits. I believe that there's an energy source that comes from an unexplained place, and that probably that energy is here in this building.
The individuals are very credible witnesses, and the situations are very simple situations that suddenly become very extraordinary because of phenomena which just cannot be classified.
More than 15 different people who live here have experienced strange haunting phenomena that they simply can't explain. At first, they just heard voices, laughing, giggling, childish shouts and murmurs. Then Rick Caesar, who lives in what was once the science lab, insists he saw a ghost.
Well, I was in the bedroom one morning getting dressed, and I saw a tall man with a white shirt and a thin tie. He was kind of looking off into the conservatory, just kind of like he was looking. And then I said, whoa, and I backed up to look again, and he wasn't there.
They may not, in fact, be individuals who are dead or have passed away coming back to haunt this location. They could, in fact, be nothing more than impressions that have been left behind in the environment that certain people are perceiving and sensing under certain extraordinary circumstances. That sound you hear right now, those are your
Chacon's investigation here begins with physical and psychological testing of the eyewitnesses. He monitors their sleep to determine if what they are experiencing could be a dream. Then he uses highly sensitive equipment to monitor the entire building over a 24-hour period.
Thermal vision allows us to visually record and document an environment in temperature variations. The night vision technology allows us to move around under complete darkness. All of these instruments work together, and then we're able to look at any types of abnormal phenomena or artifacts that we can correlate if something should take place.
While OSIR conducted its scientific investigation, Sightings walked the halls with A.B. Fogarty. It had been more than 70 years since the former class president had been here. We hoped he could help us understand why his long-departed classmates might still roam the building.
It's lost its airiness, its architectural creation. It's changed. It's a totally different thing, totally different.
There's no reason why, if in fact someone had demolished or changed the structure, that they wouldn't have come back and actually become more active because of the fact that someone altered it.
The spirit can roam anywhere, but anybody's can. The spirit is the thing who we really are.
The OSIR investigation turned up some unusual electromagnetic activity and cold spots in the walls, signs consistent with other reported residue hauntings.
We would probably have to classify this location as a classic haunt. It has all the characteristics as far as its past history, and also in regards to the experiences people continue to have.
The current residents of Old St. Petersburg High School take pride in their building's historic stature and live in peace with the building's past. Not everyone has experienced the voices and visions, but those who have believe that no matter what happens to this building in the future, it will always be filled with school spirit.
During our investigation in St. Petersburg, we had access to some of the most sophisticated technology currently available. But this equipment is still in its infancy. Investigators have yet to devise some sort of machine to objectively measure a subjective experience, like feeling the presence of a ghost.
If you've had a paranormal experience, call the Sightings hotline at 1-900-933-SIGHT. That's 1-900-933-7444. Each call 65 cents a minute. Average call lasts 3 minutes. Sightings is also online. Our email address is sightings@aol.com. Next week on Sightings.
We had 200 rescuers, we had dive teams, dogs teams.
But the dead man called out to her.
Come get me, the yellow buoy, come get me.
Then, what if this man's prediction for the year 2000 comes true? And new evidence in this UFO sighting, is it real? And this boy's remarkable story of a miracle in medicine.
Until next time, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
Next on Sci-Fi, The Sentinel.
Gary Sinise and Laura Sangiacomo.
We are dead, and this is hell.
Stephen King's The Stand continues tonight at 9 Eastern and Pacific on Sci-Fi.